Good morning everybody, welcome to this episode. My name's Aaron Patrick and today we're going to look at money in, or what most people like to call it, sending an invoice out. Let's have a go.
It's real, 'cause I can get them out of my head.
Now, the way I'm going to show you now is best practice and also how all the features work. And we're going to deep dive into sending invoices. We want to get our clients to be using it as much as we possibly can. We want to make sure our clients are comfortable in the way they're sending it. And we also want to make sure that they can use it on any device. So one of the great things about QuickBooks is it's not just the computer, it's not just signing into that browser experience that you're going to get your clients to get used to, but they can do it from their mobile phone as well. And we'll have a quick look at that. We'll make sure we're comfortable with that as we go along. So without further ado, let's get straight into it and have a look about creating ourselves an invoice. Okay then, so if you remember from last time, this is our dashboard that you come to as soon as you get to QuickBooks. One thing we're going to be interested today though is our sales section. So we're going to have a real deep dive into what our sales section can do for us. As you go into the sales section, you get presented with 4 options. There's all sales, invoices, customers, and products and services. Now, the reason that they've got those 4 options is because we can deep dive into other aspects of it. If we take all sales, for example, jumping in there, it literally gives us a breakdown of all the sales history that's happened in our client. We have the option to filter, and we have what we call a money bar on the top. Now, the money bar on the top is designed to give your client information about their business. So in this case, I've got no estimates or as I would call them, quotes outstanding. I've got some unbilled activity, more on what that means kind of later on. But more importantly than any of that is I suppose the fact that I've got overdue items. And it's items like that, it's data like that that's going to be sent directly to you, directly to your client. And it's going to give them the opportunity to make sure they're on top of everything that they can see. As well, along the top, we do have the option to just drill down just to purely invoices. So if your client's interested in what invoices are outstanding and wants to have a view just on that, this view is perfect for them. And it just gives you data then based purely on invoices. So we've got what's overdue and maybe what's been deposited lately. Our next tab is probably the tab that's most important and the one I get used to the most and what I take my clients to first and foremost, and that's our customers tab. Now, our customers tab is designed to make sure that all your clients' customers are given the information that they need. So what you can see from here is we've got a breakdown of all these customers in alphabetical order. Now, every time you go past a customer, there's some key information there. So we've got what currency they're in, we've got what their balance is at this point in time, and we've got a quick action button on the right hand side. So maybe we want to quickly go down and find our client called Jan, and we want to make sure we're going to create an invoice, or drop down here, we've got other options that we've got. The thing that you'll also notice on this layout is that we can make our customers a bit more advanced. We don't just have to put each individual name down there and go along. What we've got here is what we call sub-customers. Now, the idea of sub-customers is to make it so that if you've got multiple departments, or you've got multiple elements, or you've got multiple strings to a particular customer, then sub-customers can work in your favor. So in this way, in this showcase here, I'm showing that we've got different jobs working for them. So it's almost like a project-based approach here. So that I've got different, for Adwin Co, I'm working on different particular projects. I want to record against those projects. I want to see how profitable I am on them. So in this case, what I'm showing you here is how I can break that down and how I can show that in multiple different sub-accounts. Other examples could be that you might work for 2 different parts of a particular customer, and maybe it's a case that you want to invoice to one individual department and then to another individual department. That's where sub-customers can work quite well as well. Now, adding a brand new customer up here to this list is really, really straightforward. As you can see on the right hand side, there's the new customer button. Second I press that, I'm given the option to create a new customer directly from here. Now, the only bit that's actually critical on this is making sure we've got our display name have on here. So if I was to make Steve and jobs, The only thing that I'm actually critical of is making sure my display name. You also get options as well, and maybe it's a case that you need to put in a company as well. That way you can then decide how that is going to be displayed, making your life easier in terms of being able to go forward. Now the rest of the information is just about making it so it's easy to generate invoices on a regular basis. So if I want to put a billing address, will make my life easier going forward because I don't have to keep putting it in each and every time I have an invoice. Same with email address. Now one of the cool things about QuickBooks is the ability to be able to send invoices directly from the system, and you get this really nice audit trail that goes with it. Now you can only do that if you send it via the emails or use one of the other functionality we'll look at later. But if you put your email address for that client directly in here, obviously that's one less step to actually getting that email sent out. It's going to make your life easier. The rest of the information is basically just for you and your customer and your client. So the idea here that it gives you the ability to go and have a look about what's available. So we've got tax information, we've got payment and billing, so maybe you've got different terms for this particular client. And also probably the most important bit when we talk about multi-currency, which we'll cover, is the ability here to look at what you pay that customer in. Now, as a kind of quick way of looking into multi-currency on QuickBooks, it's a setting you have to turn on. It's not on by default. It's one of the kind of advanced features in QuickBooks. But one of the things you have to be aware of is you have to dictate from a customer point of view what their actual invoicing, what you invoice in. So if you've got a customer that you invoice in euros, you need to set them to euros, and then QuickBooks will do the hard work for you. We'll see that a lot more when we come to multi-currency later down the line. We've got the opportunity to decide if there's any attachments that relate to it or if there's a sub-customer that goes from as well. If you want to import customers though on a mass, you can actually do that using this drop-down arrow here and import customers. Now QuickBooks walks you through every step of this, and when we come and look at something in a bit more detail, I'll show you how to actually import data really nice and easy into QuickBooks. But there's multiple ways in which you can get to that data import. Now if I jump into a customer, let's pick one at random, let's choose Benjamin. When we go into this customer, you'll notice the view changes. Now, what I've basically done is gone into the customer itself, and you can see from here, it's given me quite a bit of information about that customer. Top left-hand corner, you can see up here, it's telling me information that's about where that customer lives and if there's an email address associated, and it gives me an area to add notes. The add notes bits is quite useful for you if you're going to start looking at importing the add notes functionality can be quite useful if you're thinking about debt management or something along those lines. If you've got multiple people using the system, then having that ability to have that area to write a note can be really useful. In our practice, that's exactly where we'll put our debt management. If we've got a particular client who's told us that they're not going to be able to pay us until a particular date, or they're going to be able to, they're going to send the money in at a different time, or whatever that situation is going to be, we always put it on there. Then when it comes to our debt management procedures and we're looking through, we make sure we keep an eye on that area. We make sure then we don't chase a client who's already told us that they're going to pay at a later date. The bit down here though is split into these three options. Now the only reason I'm showing projects, or the only reason projects is shown on this screen, is because I've turned it on as an additional feature. Normally you won't be seeing that projects, but as you can see, when it's there, it actually makes dealing with projects really easy because it puts it into each individual customer for you. Now I'm on transaction list and it's going to tell me what transactions I've got. You can see on my particular client here, I've just got invoices that are shown. So those invoices are just quite nicely laid out there for me. And then if I need to, I can actually go through and I can delete them, or I can get through them, all by using my batch actions option. I also got a filter option here, so it won't just show you what invoices, but all the payments, maybe any credit notes, whatever else you've got going for this particular client, that's going to be in there as well. And on the right hand side I have a nice little action button, so I can quickly go in and maybe send a reminder or copy a particular invoice, or whatever it is that I need to do on that particular case. Finally, if I need to look in the customer detail any more options, I can bring up this view here, and it's quite a nice way of being able to look at them and be able to edit them as you go along. Top right hand corner though, we do have the options to look at open and overdue, so it's kind of almost telling you the health of the client. I like to think of this as a way of understanding if I'm going to raise a new transaction for them. I always have a quick look there before I do, because that way I know that that client's in a good stead. In this case, it's £1,800 overdue, and we sent that information to them, or they were due to pay, shall I say, on October 2018. So in real life, as at today's date, I don't think I would actually be sending them any more work, because I've got a feeling that they're going to be very difficult to get the money off. But as you can see as an example, that's what it's there for. Now, in QuickBooks, there are various ways in which you can do many different transactions. One thing we've noticed on that last episode was this new button over here gives an opportunity to go in and create something really nice and easily. One of the advantages though of diving directly into a particular customer and using what's called the new transaction button at the top means it's all going to be related to that customer. I'm in Benjamin Young, so if I try and do a new transaction and use the new transaction button here, that's going to be created automatically as Benjamin Young, and it's going to go through there. If I open up the new transaction view though and just make it nice and big for us, you'll notice there's these options. And I'm going to go through each one of these and make sure we understand exactly what each one does. So our first new transaction we can create is Invoice. Now, Invoice itself is designed so you can send an invoice out via QuickBooks. You'll put some terms on it and then the client will pay for you at a later date. That's designed to be invoices. Send the invoice out, they'll pay you later. Payment is when they actually come around and making the payment for that invoice. That's where you want to go and actually go back to get that payment and put it against that particular invoice. Estimate or quote in a more kind of English term, if you like, is when we're going to send an estimate out to a client. They're going to review it, and if they're happy with it, they're going to come back to us and agree on it. Then we can base an invoice based on that estimate. Sales receipt is very, very similar to invoice. It's you actually asking for someone to, or you creating a service for someone, or selling them something. The very big difference to understand about a sales receipt and an invoice is you're going to ask the client to pay you later. Sales receipt, they've already paid, and it's really important that you get your head around that bit. Sales receipt is you've already received the money, therefore you're going to say what it is that what service you provided or what it is you've sold. And very key to that point as well, you need to also say how you received the money. So was it by cash? Was it by backs? Was it by direct debit? Whatever the method of which your client has or your customer has paid for you, you need to state directly on that sales receipt. Credit note, if you're going to issue a credit note based on the work that you've done, that's where you'll put your credit note. Delayed charge, time activity, that's more kind of advanced usage of invoicing. So basically the design of that is that if you're going to preempt something that wants to appear on an invoice in the future, you would use delayed charge or time activity. In both situations, delayed charge, time activity, that's the ability for you to be able to say, right, I need to put something on the next invoice, so I'm going to put it on there now. And then statements if you want to send a statement out to a client. So in this particular case, let's first of all create an invoice. So let's create an invoice. Now, as you can see, because we were in Benjamin Young and we created a new transaction based on Benjamin Young is all set up nicely for us in here. This is what we commonly refer to as a transaction view. You'll notice in the transaction view, it doesn't matter what you create. It could be a sales invoice, a sales receipt, a credit note. You're always going to see a very similar way in which it's laid out. And that makes it really easy for you to train your clients and gets it very easy for you to understand what's going on. So in this case, you'll notice that the top area is all about information related to the customer. So in this case, we've got Benjamin Young. We've got his email if that came in on time. Got to make payments right here. Now the payment options here is really straightforward. It's basically you go in there, you put your payments in. Payment or accepting payment options in QuickBooks makes it really easy for clients. It's one of those ways in which you can actually make it so clients start using QuickBooks on a more regular basis because you can make their life easier. So the idea that they can send an invoice out with a pay now button directly on there and they can receive payment via MasterCard, Visa, whatever it is they want to make payment. Or with a few kind of clicks here and clicks there and set up process, they can actually create a direct debit solution where every time they send an invoice out on QuickBooks, that money will automatically come into their bank account. And that can be really powerful for certain clients. You'll also notice down here we've got things like the billing address, terms, invoice date, due date. Here we've got fitter and serial number. That's actually added information I've added on this particular client. We call that custom fields, and you have a maximum of 3 you're allowed per invoice, and it gives you the opportunity then to be able to add extra things in. So here I'm talking about how I might need a fitter or a serial number on each invoice that goes out. On the right hand side we have invoice number. If you change that number now, the next invoice you send out will automatically go to the next available number. And then up at the top here is what we call our transaction amount. So it doesn't matter what activities we do below this line, this will always show what's basically due. So if ever I was to refer to a particular transaction, that's where I'd have a look. I'd always go down to that balance due button. That's where I prefer to see how my transaction is. We have a nice little settings button. It's going to let you go in. As you can see here, here's my custom fields that I've set up already. So if I didn't want to have serial numbers anymore, or I wanted something different, go in there and I can change it appropriately. I can also add different fields, and I can change what my customer can see it all from this page here. I also have the option on left hand side to recall some of my recent transactions. So maybe I want to go in and I want to bring up a transaction, I'm going to copy it or something along those lines. This gives you an opportunity to just scroll through those recent transactions and be able to recall them if you need to. Now I've added a few advanced features to this file, including location, and you'll notice below classes as well. Location and classes are something just to keep an eye on, or just to be reminded about or think about as you go along. They're ways of making your reporting later down the line work better for you. So if you're in a position where you want to have a better reporting requirement, so maybe your client's really interested in the fact that they've brought on a new class, or they've brought on a new location, or they've brought a new shop, or whatever it's going to be, that can be really useful to them to be able to put that in there. Now the next area down here is all about what it is you've sold. This is what this table represents here. One thing that's really useful about QuickBooks, it's designed to make it really straightforward. Now, service date, items, and all that lot, that can all be configured later. You can change that, maybe take that out if it's not needed or anything. But what is important is your product and service. The idea of products and service is a list of what your client can sell. And it's designed, again, to make your life easier for the client, so that the client can send information, send invoices out really easily. So as we can see here, we drop this product and service down, and I have all these various products and services. Now, one thing that we can build into QuickBooks, and one thing again as a more advanced stage, is the ability for us to actually have a stock management solution. So you'll notice some of these items here are actually connected directly with a stock. So for example, if I went down here and looked at my fire fans, and I said I wanted to sell 3 of them, notice how my quantity of hand was 7. As soon as I've sold 3 of them, obviously then it's going to get reduced by 3 at that point. But do notice though, all I did was I selected fire fan. The quantity originally was 1, the rate was £82.50, and the VAT was coming out at 20% for me automatically. That's because in my fire fan products and service area, I'd already defined that information. I'd already gone through and had made sure that every time I select fire fan, my rate, my VAT was already defined. Therefore, all I do is change my quantity. Do notice what happens to my subtotal and then my total. As you can see, the second that I create and change my quantity, everything else falls in line. And that's what this is all about. You spend a bit of time making that products and service list absolutely spot on for you, and then you're going to make finding and generating invoices really quickly. So if I go to the next line, for example, and start typing in one of the next items, so maybe this time I'm going to do a fire guard, and maybe this time I'm going to sell 5 of them, press tab, and as you can see, my invoice is updated. It takes the onus away from your client, or probably more important, your client's employees, from being able to understand things like VAT and quantity and amounts and all that lot. All they need to know is what they've sold, how many they've sold, and QuickBooks can work out the rest for them. As you can see then, going forward, basically I can keep going and adding items to this table and going through there. Now, what about if you've got something brand new that you've never sold before? Well, it's really easy. If you need to add items to the product and service list, or the item doesn't appear here at this point, then what you can do is you can just start typing the word in. So for example, maybe they've suddenly got this brand new idea that they're going to sell some fire guard. But it's not just any fire guard, it's an elite one. Well, you just type in the word fire guard elite in this case. I press tab and it asks me what sort of product and service it's going to be. Now, when it asks you that information, all it really needs to define is if it's a stock item, so does it need to track the item? Is it a non-stock item where it just there's no real need to track it? Or is it a service where you're providing a service so there's nothing to track there whatsoever? And then finally, there's a bundle. And one of the episodes I'm going to do later is why bundles can be really useful and it can make your life easier going forward. So in this case, all I want to do is create a service. All this information here is kind of what you can put in there. So it's all about making sure that you've got the ability to make that product and service list work for you. For now, though, we're just going to put the bare minimum in. And that for me is the name of what it is you're selling, the description. So in this case, it's an Elite Fire Guard. And if you have it and you sell it on a regular basis, you even have the ability to say what it sells at. So maybe it's £100 every time I sell one. Then finally, I do get the option to decide where it is it's going to appear on my P&L. So maybe it's a new product I need to start looking at, and maybe one of my reporting requirements is I want to start seeing that as a new one. I can just add this to here if I need to. I can create a brand new account if I need to. For now, though, sales seems pretty good for me. And then all I need to do now is consider what tax rate, so VAT rate. In this case, I'm going to put it to 20% because all I really care about is that the VAT is going to be added on correctly. I save and close that, and it's simple as that. I've now got this brand new item. I'm starting to say there's 2 of them, and we're going to make sure that going forward, that will always be an item that I can sell. You'll notice down here there's the ability to add extra lines to your table, clear all the lines that are above, and maybe add a subtotal. So maybe when it comes to fire guards, I want them, and all you do is you drag and drop, you see, I want them to be subtotaled, and I want my fire fan to be separate. So here my fire guard and my fire guard elite are now subtotaled for me to make it easier for my customer possibly, and then my fire guard is just set by himself and it gets added to the subtotal down the bottom. The final bit, the bottom area of it, is basically what's happened to the invoice. So you've got a nice little VAT breakdown here. If for whatever reason you had 2 different VAT rates, notice that the second I put the second VAT rate in, it splits it over for me. What you'll also see here is message on invoice. So if you need to put a particular invoice message on here, that's there. Message on the statement, so if you're going to be issuing out statements, that will show us description for this particular invoice. And then there's the ability to add an attachment as well. So maybe you've got kind of an order that the client sent to you, maybe an email or something. You can put it in there. It's going to make your life easier when it comes to sending that out. And when you do send it out, you can even attach that attachment as well. Now, as a kind of advanced feature, I have enabled deposit as well. So the idea then is the client's already paid me, say, £150. Then it's already going to account for that. Now, the second you put £150 in there, you do get these options at the top, basically saying, what was this or where did this money come from? So in here, I could say that they gave me some cash on the day. I put it to the petty cash tin. And it automatically goes to undeposited funds on my case, which again is more advanced functionality we can look at later. But for now, all I want it to do is say that I put that straight into my petty cash account. And that means that £150 already gone in, and we're only going to be asking for our client for £796. Now, when it comes to actually the next steps, my invoice is I'm really happy with that invoice now. I'm ready to send it. So first of all, I'm just going to save it so that it is good as it is. And when I do save it, it does give me the option down the bottom to actually print and preview. So maybe I want to have a look at that invoice and make sure I'm happy with it. All of this on screen now, you can change every aspect of it. I basically got some kind of default settings on here. But as you can see, here's my invoice. Here's me, Nelson's Fireplace. Here's my invoice to Benjamin Young, my invoice numbers, my payment methods. I've got the deposit that I've already paid, and that's where that payment will come from. And I've got the items that I've actually sold already. So I've got the Elite Fire Guard, I've got the Gold Edged Fire Guard, and I've got the Stop Toe Fan. I could print that off and just send it out snail mail, or I could let QuickBooks do some hard work for me. Now, next to print and preview, I got the option to enable recurrent payments. That gives me the option to actually run that quite nicely. So if I want to, I can run that invoice on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And it's something that you can make it so it automates for you. I could customize this, so maybe I've got different types of invoices. Very common for that is if you're kind of going to be using or you're going to be sending invoices to like the council or something. Maybe they've got a particular pro forma and you want to set that pro forma up. well, you might want to have a different type of invoice for those sort of scenarios. And then once I've saved the transaction and the transaction is now live, I do get the option for more. Now what more is designed to do is it gives you some more options. So in this case, I can look at copying it. So maybe this invoice is perfect and I want it to send to another customer as well. Maybe I'd want to void or delete the transaction. So both in which ways is it going to actually get rid of the transaction for me. Or transaction journal. Maybe I want to look at it in a debit and credit scenario. Maybe I want to see how that's going to affect all my different accounts. And that's what transaction journal's for. Finally, audit history, just a real quick and easy way to be able to see what's happened there. Now, next to save button is our sticky, what we call our sticky button. Now, the idea here is it's going to give you various options. Whatever your last option was is what's going to appear in green, but if you press the little arrow next to it, it's going to tell you what else is there. Now, if I zoom right into there, I can go through what all these options are. So I'm going to start from the top, save and new. Saves exactly what you've got on screen and provides you a new invoice. So that's if you've got multiple invoices you want to get through on a day. It doesn't send it though, remember, it just saves it, creates a new one. Save and close. Saves that invoice exactly how it is, takes you back to the screen you're already at. Save and share link means you'll save the invoice, but it will also generate you a shareable link. So imagine that you're using Outlook or Gmail or something like that to send your invoices off. This is a really quick way where you can save it, create that share link, go to your Outlook, whatever it's going to be, and send it through there. Save and share via WhatsApp, brand new way of doing things. It's just that you can connect it up to the WhatsApp Messenger and you can then send it directly out from there. So instead of having to rely on email, you can literally send it directly to the person itself. And then we've got save and send. Now we're going to play with save and send here. And to do that, I'm just going to put in a random email up here. Now I'll put a random email and press save and send. It's going to tell me on this right hand side what it is it's going to send. All this is all you can change at any point in time if you need to. Send and close. And you get a nice little email to say that it's been sent. Now the other good thing, or the thing that you should be encouraging your clients to be sending it via QuickBooks, is you get a nice little audit trail. So if I click into here and have a look down the bottom where the activity sector is, you'll notice that it's telling me I've sent that invoice. Let me take a moment to talk about our sponsor, Boffix.com. Boffix.com. What they do differently is they have one subscription to offer all your business needs. It could be accounting, virtual office, call handling, IT services, legal or workspaces. They've got you covered. From an accounting point of view as well, they can get you options where you can actually look at fantastic deals, and they can even offer you QuickBooks subscription. If you want a QuickBooks subscription, these guys have got you covered. They'll be able to offer you the best rates and best deals you've got going and offer you support on top of that as well. Also, if you are interested in them, you can look at any price point that you want. So whatever your business needs, whatever your financial commitments are, you can go along, put in the details you need, and then you can decide how much it's going to be worthwhile to you. So thanks for Boffix for supporting this video, and hopefully you guys can use them to be able to grow your business. Okay, so what else can you do in the transaction? So that was a quick invoice, looking at the invoice section. Obviously payment section, that basically means we can jump in here and we can say that these invoices have been paid. So maybe that invoice and that invoice have been paid. I can say the date, I can say the current amount, and I can say where it's gone to. So at this point, I can quickly get that information paid over. The next option that I've got in here is estimate. Now the idea of estimates is really straightforward. Maybe with Benjamin, I'm not quite 100% sure yet what it is that he wants, and he actually wants to ask me for a particular quote. And it's for a bespoke item of £2,500 and for building materials. And all I need to really think about here is sending that quote estimate off. Now when I send and save this one this time, this can get sent over, and the only kind of difference that I have here is when I go back into that estimate, you'll notice that at the top it gives me a bit of an idea of what the status of it is. So imagine they've rang me up, they said yeah, I'm agreeing with that one, I can accept it, I can say Ben accepts it on today's date, and then if I save that transaction, then that status has been saved. So now that estimate's done, I can go in and just create an invoice directly from here. So all I'm saying is that instead of having to put maybe 50% of the invoice now and 50% later, I'm going to have all of this estimate now, create that invoice, And as you can see, I've generated a brand new invoice based on here. One of the nice things about it as well is you get an opportunity to look at linked transactions. So at the top there, I've got the option to look at estimate. Down here, I've got the option to see where that's linked to. And it just means that from an audit trail, I can go back and forth and see where this information is. But if I need to, I press save and send. Save and send. I've now sent another invoice over to him. So if I was going to go back into any of those invoices that I've actually looked at recently, you'll note, if I was to look at this activity of this invoice as well, now that I've viewed it on my phone, you'll notice that it's also been updated at the bottom. Not only is it said when I sent the invoice, but when the customer viewed the invoice. It's a nice little extra audit trail there for you to be able to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Sales receipt, as I said before, exactly the same principle of an invoice. The only difference is you need to define where it's been sold. So this time, if the client's come back in and said to me, actually, I quickly need some cleaner just to be able to clean up my actual fireplace I've just bought off us, and they're going to pay it directly into my petty cash and we're going to receive cash from it, then that transaction gets dealt with straight away. So I even have the option to send him a copy of that to say, thank you for your order, here's your receipt. So I press save and send and close. I've now recorded that extra transaction really quickly and easily. The other two options here are all about making sure that we can work with the product to make it easier for us and make sure we don't forget something. One of the worst things that can happen is you've actually done something for a client or you've sold something to a client, but then you forgot to actually charge for it later. So the idea here is if I was to put a delayed charge in now, I would say that on today's date, I went through and I gave him a log burner. And the idea was that I'm going to buy him the log burner now, I'm going to install it to him, but only when I've actually installed it am I then going to actually charge for him. So let's save and close. So I've got that log burner all on the system. When it then comes to creating a brand new invoice now, notice on the right hand side, I'm being prompted by what we call our customer drawer. Now the idea of the customer drawer is it's telling me, have you remembered about that log burner that you've installed for your client? So in this case, all I need to do is add that particular transaction, maybe think about some installation costs, and then again, I can just save and send that to the client and then wait for that prompt payment to come through. So as you can see, that's quite a quick way of looking at all the ways in which you can create new transactions on there. Now at the very end of it, if you need to create a statement for a client, it's really straightforward. I've got the opportunity to create a statement here. Now the other thing to remember is in this area here, I've already got quite a bit of information that's starting to come through. So I do have the option here to batch action things. Now the idea of batch action is once you've ticked this little box here, or maybe you only want to tick a few of them, whatever's got the ticks on them at this point in time, press batch action and you get these options. So maybe it's the fact that I want to send a reminder about these items or whatever it's going to be. Press send reminders and those get sent off nice and easy. So hopefully you can see how sending an invoice can be really useful. One of the other benefits though is all that you can do on your mobile phone. I'm going to do a separate video of how your phone can also send invoices and for your customers and clients, and that's normally one of the things where they find it really easy to go forward. Thanks for listening to this one. The next one I'm going to look at is money out. So we're going to look at how do you record expenses, how do you figure out how to put transactions in. So that should be quite useful for you. So in the meantime, take care of yourself. See you soon.
I say yeah. I told him I can be a fighter if you want. I'll be there to catch you if you fall. I can make it brighter when it's dark. I told him I would do it all for you, and I know you do it for me too. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter. That it's real, cause I can get him out of my head. I don't care what we do, everything's feeling new. Even if we're staying in bed, my heart is saying yeah.